Well, it's time to break out the tissues. This is a sad one. So, welcome to the D. Louise book series. I'm Christina Kairos, TINA. This is where we read book, talk about books. There's no special effects going on here, no theme music, nothing special going on here. Just reading books, talking books. So let's break out the tissues. Oh, before we get to crying here, please hit the like and subscribe. I could really use your support. I have this idea for a Christmas miracle. I know it's really, really far fetched, but I'd like 1,000 subscribers by Christmas. Those of you who've already subscribed, thank you very much. Most appreciative. I need 900 more. So if you could see fit to spreading the word a little bit, please check out Flashback Mondays. Talk about reading what you own. We're going through my Romantic Times magazine, seeing what books I bought back then and still have today. So we're working on that. And we're working on Janet Ivanovich, 30 Days of Janet, because this is a rough period for me. See those videos. We're doing 1 for the money, 2 for the dough, 3 to get deadly, 4 to score, high 5, hot 6, 7 up, hard 8 to the 9s. I can go on. I know them by heart. So we'll be leaving this series for a little bit and then come back to it. But this is a real hard book. It's a transition book. We're transitioning from one thing to the other. So we need some little loving and support here. It's a sad one. We start the book, should I bring it up here? Breach of Duty, J.A. JANCE, book 14 of the J.P. BEAUMONT series. J.P. is currently in this book as detective with the homicide department in the Seattle Police Department. He is currently on his 4th partner. It's a thing in the department that his partners are all jinxed. His second partner is paralyzed in a wheelchair, and she's gonna get in trouble. Child is gonna get in trouble. His third partner also went out with disabilities, so he's on his 4th partner, and things are not looking good. This is a real sad book. It has a sad ending, sad beginning, and it's really fast-paced. In the middle of it, JP's off like a rocket, and it just keeps going. We start the book off with, we've been talking about this a couple of books, but it's finally time. His grandmother has finally made the decision to, my pal here, come here, to dispose of her husband's remains because the dog has finally passed. The dog was in love with the husband and they were companions forever. And the dog was really old, so the dog has passed. So she's going to dispose of her husband's ashes and the dog's ashes together. So they do that. And then when JP returns from this small 2-day thing with his grandmother, he comes back and Sue Daniels informs him that they've been assigned 2 cases. Sue Daniels is his current partner. Ron Peters was his former partner that's in the wheelchair, but he has successfully married Amy, and they are expecting their child any day now. And they also have Tracy and Heather from a previous marriage. Currently, his boss is Sergeant Watkins, and his bigger boss is Larry Powell. This is all going to change. A lot of stuff in this book is going to change. That's why I said this is a pivotal book in the series. It's the bridge between the old and the new. We're going to start something new next book. So Sue Danielson is also upset. Her ex-husband is coming to town. He's got these grandiose ideas about taking his sons to Disney World. He used to beat her. He was an abuser, so she's worried what that's going to do, but we will talk about this. So first of all, he gets back from this mini trip, and Sue Daniels tells him that Agnes Freeman died in a fire that was caused by arson. And they also found $300,000 in cash in a refrigerator in her garage. There was also a Gowl Halloween party role playing in the park, and the kids found a skeleton in the park. So they get called into Captain Powell's office, and Powell tells him that his wife has Lou Gehrig's disease and he has resigned. So JP's boss is now out. So that's one of the first big changes. Then they start to investigate Agnes's siblings to find out who stood to inherit the money if they knew about the money. So they've got Andrew, George, and Hilda, and they want to know who made the call to report said fire. So they go and talk to the neighbor, Malcolm, and Becky, his wife, and Sue tells, on the way there, Sue tells JP that her ex-husband, Richie's coming over to the house tomorrow, and he wants to take Jared and Chris away. Then we go to see Mildred and Andrew George, and Andrew is tethered to a clothesline. He's got one of those security vests that you put on kids, like people will, if people are afraid their kids are going to wander away, and they put them on the body leash. And some people think that's offensive, but this elderly guy has Alzheimer's, and he liked to walk, and that was a way of maintaining he wouldn't walk away or walk into cars or anything like that. They kept him chained up in the backyard, but he had this leash and he could walk the entire length of the backyard, but he couldn't go into the street or wander away. So they're all questioning that until they've explained the circumstances to that. So then they try and go see Mildred, the sister, at a trucking company, but when they get there, the business is closed up for lunch. So JP and Sue go to lunch, and she explains about her husband beating her and stuff like that. Then they go back to the truck rental company, and they get mixed vibes. They totally, absolutely believe that Mildred is sleeping with the owner, and her son is in federal prison, and they go through all the stuff that really doesn't matter to the story. So JP talks to Waddy, and then Ralph Ames calls him. He wants JP to go on a cruise, an overnight cruise. His girlfriend wants to set him up with a friend of hers, and so they're going to do a dinner first to see if things are copacetic, and then if things work out, they're going to do the cruise. And JP gets cruise sick, so he would end up having Dramamine the whole trip. And it's kind of hard. A lot of the cruise ships do a lot of drinking, and he is an alcoholic. So we'll see about that. I'm sorry. Better. So then the lady was Cassandra Wilcox, and she was a very rich stockbroker that they wanted to hook him up with. So then Darla Cunningham comes and talks to JP. Her father is an Indian shaman, and he knows who the bones belong to. He had this dream that they were found in the park. Everything the Darla tells him has come true. So JP absolutely 100% believes the situation. Then he learns that his arch enemy, Paul Kramer, the guy that hates his guts 6 ways to Sunday, has been promoted and is now his boss. And he's a get it done, get it quick, get it done yesterday kind of guy, doesn't care if it's true or not, just wants to wrap up the case to get, the credit. And so JP has issues with that. So then they also discovered that there's the investigator on the case who handled the bones has been infected, and JP honestly believes it's part of the curse that are on the bones because of the way they were handled. So the guy's in the hospital sick. So then Dollar says her father, Henry Leaping Deer, is a shaman, and David Half Moon appeared to her dad in a dream. They had put his body in a canoe and they'd given it to the burial ground, but JP believes that the items the guy was buried with in his canoe have been stolen, and that will later turn out to be true, but they're still investigating. And the kids were playing field hockey with the bones, and that wasn't good either. You are enjoying the heck out of this, aren't you? So then they go, they want to speak to James Green Jeans because he called in about the bones, and they want to talk to Atkins and Barry Newsom too. And he goes to see Jimmy Green Jeans, who panics when he figures out that Bo is a cop because he doesn't want Don Atkins and Barry Newsom to know that JP knows about him, and he worries about his friend who will be in trouble. Also, when JP is at the bar talking to these people, Maxwell Cole shows up drunk out of his butt, and when JP questions the boys who possibly were involved with the bones, he says, look, he goes, I may not be able to XYZ, but if I have my friend here, Cole, do an interview, expose on you in the newspaper, you'll lose your business. So they must have done something there. So JP drives Maxwell home because he's plastered off his butt. And JP calls Max's phone and says, hey, when you wake up tomorrow morning, the reason your car is not in front of your... Where are you? Oh. The reason your car is not in front of your house is that it's left at the restaurant. But then we later discover that the car was stolen and somebody was framed as DUI death, and it wasn't a DUI death, it was homicide. But it takes them a while to figure that one out. They go and check on the other sibling, Hilda Smathers, and her house. She's a pack rat. She's very unclean. It's messy. It's disgusting. Then she informs them that Agnes used to work for the Considines, so JP wants to go talk to the Considines. He also tells Kramer the info that they are treating Lawson as a DWI or DUI accident and not murder, and JP honestly believes that it should be treated as murder. And then Kramer thinks that his boss Kramer thinks that JP is trying to haze him, and they get in a big fight. And there are some other things that go on there. Then Kramer tells him to hand over the case to other detective. He doesn't want JP involved. He doesn't believe the Indian stuff, and it goes to hell in a handbasket from there. Then JP investigates more at the bar, and I'd like to make a personal note here. On the one hand, I can see JP's point. However, he is so wrapped up in his job that he's been so focused on his job over the years, and his family was telling him this at the rehab place, that between the alcohol and his job, he was never there for them. He was never there for the family for anything, for any occasions, any graduations, anything, because his job always came first, or his liquor always came first. So now that he's off the liquor, he's becoming a little bit more decision-wise that maybe family does have some importance here. and especially with the grandmother. The grandmother is playing a big part on his head and making him realize that family is important. But my point was that he's so wrapped up in the job and doing the job and being a cop that he doesn't care what happens to him. But I think he should care about Sue Daniels, because if if things go six ways to Sunday, she could get fired, she could lose her job, and it would be JP's fault because he didn't follow the rules and didn't follow what his boss told him. And she's a single mother with two kids, and that just doesn't work. So later on, she does tell Sue what happened, and Sue gets mad at him because she should, that he's doing all this against department protocol, that he's being a one-man detective. And so then they calm down and they decide, well, let's call the other detectives and fill them in and tell them about the Indian stuff. Even though Kramer forbids you to mention the Indian stuff, let's bring it up anyway. But they never actually get to that point to the other detectives. So they meet with Mr. and Mrs. Constantine, and Mrs. Constantine's brand new and doesn't know nothing, so she leaves. So they sit down with Fred, and the minute the money is brought up, he clams up, calls his attorney. And JP is like, I don't get, he's not a suspect in the murder. What's going on here? So that ends that. And then JP goes back to the cafe and finds Max again plastered. And Tony turns out to be a pure Native American, and his dad was deceased, and his mom, Angie Engelbretson, lives in a retirement home, and it turns out he was adopted and that he was developmentally disabled, and he did not have a driver's license. He did not know how to drive a car. So the fact that this was a DUI, it gives JP more ammunition that he was framed, that he was probably killed before he was put in the car, and then they poured alcohol all over him to give the impression of being drunk, but he was flat out murdered. I totally believe that. So then JP calls Audrey Cummings, and the investigator Derek Matthews is still in the hospital with that disease because of the curse. And then he goes to see Mrs. Engelbertson, and he confirms that David Half Moon is the kid's grandfather, and that he was Indian, and the whole 9 yards. Then he gets a call from Barry Newsom, and he's like, JP blah blah, and the phone call gets cut off. Apparently at that time, JP wasn't home at the time when the phone call came in. It's a message on his answering machine. Seconds later, Newsom was killed, and then another person in his house was killed. So Tim Blair, he traces the phone call, and Tim Blaine answers the phone, and JP had worked with him previously, so Tim Blaine invites him out to the crime scene, and so then he tells Sue Daniels what's going on, and she comes out to the crime scene, and JP doesn't like the fact that he left her kids with Rich, so he sends her home, and this proves to be an issue. So while JP is with Blaine and working out the crime scene, he gets a phone call from Sue's kid. Her husband has shot his mother. And JP has Jared and Chris sneak out a bedroom window and go down the block with the cell phone. And JP gets all the guys on the scene at the other place, has them calling the local cops. They can't go into the apartment or house because their boyfriend says that if a cop enters the room, he will kill them just walking in. So JP gets there and pretends to be a boyfriend. And one thing leads to another, and it goes to hell in a handbasket. So JP is quite distressed over that whole situation. And so then JP finally gets the call back from Mr. Constantine about meeting with his attorney, and Mr. Constantine reveals an extremely valuable clue. And upon this, JP investigates further, and again, things go to hell in a handbasket. But the real murderer is discovered, and the case is solved, and Sue Danielson, his latest partner, is dead. And when he tries to talk to Paul Kramer, because everybody in the department came by the hospital, as they should, other high-ranking peoples, and everybody paid the respects but Kramer. And JP was kind of bent out that Kramer was her immediate superior officer. He should have been there. And one thing leads to another, and JP quits. Flat out quits. And when he gets home, a little later than he should have, he arrives, and his grandmother and Lars, his AA sponsor, and Ralph and Mary and Heather and Tracy are all there if he needs to talk. And he brings Jared and Chris home with him to spend the night, and then the next day he takes them to their grandparents. But this is the bridge book between the new series and the old series. This is where JP's life as a homicide police detective ends. And in the next book, I believe he's going to be working with, I don't want to give out the title yet. We'll approach that situation with the next book. I think it's Birds of Prey. I got it on the table over there. I just don't want to. It is Birds of Prey. So this is book 14. I'd appreciate the likes and subscribes. And like I said, break out the tissues. You start the book crying and you end the book crying. This ends the first chapter of JP's life with us, and we'll be starting his new life in the next book. And hopefully he'll be doing a little more family time. But hopefully he won't be thinking so narrowly focused anymore. Maybe he's learned his lesson that family is important and family should come first. Yes, do your job as best as you can, but family needs to come first. That's a big lesson from this book. So please hit the like and subscribe. Let me know I'm doing a good job, and let's get ready for 30 Days of Janet and some lighter material. This is a little heavy for this time of year for me, but it's a good series. It's a really good series, and I really like it. So please have a good night. Thank you.